In this presentation, we are going to analyze the free trade agreement between Colombia and South Korea, illustrated with Hyundai. The group is composed by
Ana María Sanchez,
María Camila Currea,
and Karen Villamarin.
I'm gonna introduce each style negotiation and culture in each country. Colombia. Respect hierarchy and authority. In companies, employees need authorization of a superior or manager. Body language. Colombians tend to use too much body language, like using the hands when they talk. Tend to use bargaining. Negotiation customs. A good and firm shake hand at the beginning and at the end of the negotiation. Relationships. Colombians have a professional and, if possible, personal relationship. South Korean culture. Listening cultures believe they have the right attitude to information gathering. They do not precipitate imprudent action. They allow ideas to mature, and they are ultimately accommodating in their decisions. Negotiations take time. Start building a relationship, don't show impatience or irritation. Gift giving is an endemic part of Korean business life and should not be confused with notions of bribery and corruption. Ensure a compatibility of levels in meetings. Punctuality is very important. They tend to become emotional if they feel that things are not going their way. Confucianism ethics dominate business. Show respect for authority, age, and seniority. Chinese ideal was ruled by men of superior education and morality rather than by those merely of superior birth. University and professional connections are more important than family name or wealth. Companies have a strong informal hierarchy which is based upon personal relationships and loyalties.
we chose the free trade agreement negotiation between Colombia and South Korea. In fact, President Santos is willing to sign this agreement even though it could ruin the automotive industry. Colombian commerce represents the 0.02% of what Korea buys to the world. South Korea exports cars, integrated circuits, ships, kerosene, and phones. The negotiation of this free trade agreement with South Korea started the 7th December of 2009, despite the world economic crisis that was going on in that moment that driven the power countries to take protectionist and interventionist measures. Colombian proposal is to keep selling to South Korea what they are actually selling right now. 46% of the exports is coffee, 23% is scrap metal, 17% ferronickel, and the rest of the exports is latex, caramels, and chocolates. This while South Korea keeps selling the same to Colombia. 43% of the imports are vehicles, 27% machinery, which includes phones, air conditioning, washing machines, recorders, and video cameras, 19% chemicals, and 3% textiles. Mexico and Brazil didn't want to sign a free trade agreement with South Korea, and the United States hasn't decided yet due to the impacts on the automotive industry. However, even though Colombia has those same risks with the automotive industry, President Santos is decided to keep protecting the foreign investment, which makes Colombia the fifth country on the doing business of the World Bank.
Now I'm going to explain the negotiation strategies used by each side. South Korea. Aggressive strategy. Aggressive negotiators run over opponents without caring about the counterpart's position. Skilled negotiators will take this strategy to crash upon their opponents. Intimidating strategy. The base of this strategy is fear in the counterpart, which is the motivator. It's a thoughtful strategy done in an indirect way, making that the other part doesn't realize that it's being made. It's based on attitude done on physical presence and requires the cooperation of the counterpart. The following statements indicate that intimidation is being used. 1. Of course you realize that only a limited number of contracts will be issued this year. 2. We understand how important this deal must be for your country. Colombia. Social strategy. In this strategy, the important receptions are designed to make the counterpart believe their best interests are being taken care of. The main idea of the strategy is to be friends first and business partners second. This is a way to evaluate and strengthen relationships in a way that the counterpart compromise. Principled negotiation. The goal is to produce a wise agreement in an efficient and amicable way. The principles are: separate the people from the problem, be soft on the people, hard on the problem, focus on interest, not positions, avoid having a bottom line, explore interest, invent options for mutual gain, develop multiple options to choose from and decide later, insist on using objective criteria, try to reach a result based on standards independent of will, reason and be open to reasons.
Now we are going to explain three different intercultural theories from Colombia and South Korea. According to Hofstede, cultures can be differentiated according to 5 dimensions. In this case, Colombia has a high power distance, which means that society believes that inequalities amongst people are simply a fact of life. It is also one of the most collectivistic cultures in the world. Belonging to an in-group and aligning yourself with that group's opinion is very important. Colombia is a masculine country. It means that Colombians are competitive, are status-oriented, towards members of other groups or social classes. Them also have a high uncertainty avoidance, which means that as a nation, they are seeking mechanisms to avoid ambiguity. There are rules for everything. Colombians have short-term orientation, which means that a society shows a conventional historical short-term point of view. On the other side, South Korea, talking about power's distance, is a hierarchical society. This means that people accept a hierarchical order in which everybody has a place and which needs no further justification. South Korea is considered a collectivistic society, meaning that in any relationship, everyone takes responsibility for fellow members of their group. It's also considered a feminine society focused on working in order to live. South Korea is one of the most uncertainty-avoiding countries in the world. For this reason, they maintain rigid codes of belief and behavior and are intolerant for unorthodox behavior and ideas. South Korea is a long-term oriented society. People live their lives, guide virtues, and practical good examples. Lewis stated a classification for cultures, dividing them by dimensions, known as linear active, multi-active, and reactive cultures. As we see in the chart, Colombia and South Korea are very different by this classification. Colombia, being a multi-active culture, is characterized by being extrovert, impatient, talkative, unpunctual, emotional, works any hours, and have unrestricted body language. But South Korea is reactive, introvert, patient, silent, respectful, punctual, avoids confrontation, ultra-honest, and has a subtle body language. Thirdly, Halse states three cultural factors. Colombia is in that way defined as a low-context, circular, and territorial culture. Those concepts explain that this country requires more explanation and has less chance of misunderstanding. They also tend to do many things at the same time and have a greater concern for ownership. South Korea, in the same way, is a high-context, linear, and territorial culture, meaning that there are many contextual elements that help people to understand the rules and only do one thing at a time.
The consequences and outcomes of the negotiation. The negotiation may have negative consequences. The most affected sector is the automotive industry that represents the 5% of the national industry. In that industry, the industry of automotive parts is the one that generates the most value. It has 24,000 employees, which represents 300,000 million pesos in wages a year. However, if the free trade agreement starts, we could lose all of that money and around 20,000 employees will lose their jobs because there is no way that Colombian automotive industry could compete with the South Korean industry. Just one factory of Hyundai, the biggest one, has for its own 34,000 employees and produces 5,400 cars a day, 11 times more than the whole production in Colombia. So it would be, as we said, impossible to compete with them. Moreover, the stability of that automotive sector and its chances to keep growing are given by the Convenio Automotor Andino to promote the development of industries. This one will disappear if there is a free trade agreement from Colombia with South Korea.
Finally, as suggestions that people have to take into account to negotiate with South Koreans, we figure out that Koreans for trade are aggressive and intimidating, and for investment, they are deceptive and consensus. They have zero interest about signing agreements with which they have no attention or where they have no strong opponents. They also negotiate in teams composed of high-skilled cowboys. Those things means that negotiators have to give responses based on diplomacy, be strong with the points to negotiate, and never use women as negotiators, because they have an image of them as secretaries or interprets in this process.
The information we used in that presentation was found in different internet pages, in an article from Maria Alejandro Valencia, and the book Negotiation Reader. Thanks for your attention.